Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the church. Welcome to First Church of Religious Science. I want to greet all of you today who are here with us on Zoom. I want to say hi to those of you who are watching on YouTube and those of you who are watching us on Facebook. Jimmy has told me we had as many as 400 or 500 people last week watching our service, so it's really wonderful. It's great to see all of you here all over the country joining us today. Joining us in our weekly classes for self-healing and for transformation. If you're new, we're always presenting new thought lessons in truth. Every single lesson is designed to inspire both seasoned students with important reminders, and we're going to do it in a way so someone who is new could greatly benefit from the lesson as well. Today, it's Labor Day weekend, and I'm going to have a slide for you here of John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck was a great American writer. He lived from 1902 until 1968. I bring him up today on this Labor Day weekend for a few reasons. First, again, it's Labor Day weekend, and Steinbeck, more than anyone I've ever known or read, had empathy, respect, and concern for the worker. He was known for being a great communicator and for wanting his writing to be easily understood by a wide audience. I recall when I was younger, I was probably about 10 or 12, that my father said one of the great things about Steinbeck was a great communicator. He didn't talk above people, he didn't talk below people. He told me that Steinbeck had in his house, his cook, I think it was, sit down and read every single book or manuscript he wrote before it was published. And then he'd listen to their feedback. And after that, if she didn't understand it completely, he would rework it. He wouldn't publish it. Years later, I learned that it wasn't just his cook, it was his wife Elaine and others in his household. If they didn't understand it, it didn't get published. I remember in my studies over the years, some stuffy ministers of my day who were teaching the teaching somewhat exclusively from the textbook and using language and terminology that often was a bit obscure to people. So if you're new to the teaching and if what we're doing sounds obscure, we're making every effort to make it all very simple because it doesn't have to be hard. Steinbeck, if around today, would have none of that stuffy stuff, nor would my father for that matter. If you're in the business of communication, you want to be able to communicate and present your ideas in the simplest possible ways. And I smile because Steinbeck, a lot like our own Louise Hay, didn't think any of that erudite or complicated language was helpful. I mean, if we're here to communicate, we're here to communicate. Great communicators are mostly interested in getting their ideas across and being understood. Anecdotally, Louise Hay, who got her start here in our center here in New York City, was often not fully appreciated in religious science circles in the early days because of her commitment to the simplicity of the teaching. I remember those days well. I remember the old ministers when I was just coming in. And I think there was quite a bit of jealousy, which was very silly considering how Louise catapulted the teaching out of, almost obscurity to a place where hundreds of millions of people learned of it because of her. She said, and you've all heard me say before, it's all very simple in talking about the law of cause and effect, in talking about karma, in talking about taking the positive approach, the affirmative approach. Before her, people somehow had a need to make the teaching more difficult. And I can attest to this. I can attest the hundreds of hours spent at Unity and religious science, studying metaphysical dictionaries, metaphysical interpretations of the Bibles and scriptures, metaphysical interpretations of every kind of scripture through my education. I did it because I didn't know any better at the time. And there's a lot of great books out there if someone is really willing to dig through them, and really study. But I know for certain that no one really has to do that kind of work. It doesn't have to be that hard. I'm one of the ones that spent years studying Emerson, and I would read him aloud, and I would read the textbook, and I would study the glossary, and I would use the concordance, and I'd read every kind of book. On the other hand, though, I understood from early on that we're talking about one law that's always in operation, that this one law of the universe, in the end, everything is about this eternal energy, this love, and this law and the way it works. So if you were attending one of my spiritual centers or church groups some 25 years ago, the curriculum would have had us studying some of the following people. We probably would have studied Judge Thomas Troward, who was known for his intricate and philosophical writings on metaphysics and the law of attraction. Very few people really understood him. There would be people, of course, like the old ministers, Reverend Judith and myself and Theo and Joyce, Reverend Joyce. There would be those of us who would wade through all that material, and we would force ourselves to understand what was taught, and we'd learn it well enough to pass the exams. But as our surveys have shown us, there's very little interest in this type of heavy study anymore. Ralph Waldo Emerson, again, was another great, and he's not for everyone. His transcendental essays often contain complex language and very abstract ideas. But I'll tell you, if you ever delve into his writings, his consciousness was absolutely breathtaking. You can learn a lot just from his quotations. You can Google his quotations. If you were ever able to take the time to study and read aloud his essays, and I'll tell you, it's a lot of work, they can open you up to some very profound realizations. Emma Curtis Hopkins was another one of the greats. She was very influential in New Thought circles. Her teachings, though, many would describe as tough, and for most people, esoteric. The writings of the Unity group, Charles E. Myrtle, Fillmore, delve into the metaphysical interpretations of Christianity, and they're challenging for a large number of readers today who are having less and less biblical instruction or interest. And one more honorable mention before talking about Holmes would be Mary Baker Eddy. She was the founder of Christian Science. In her writings and intricate explanations of spiritual healing and theology, she would talk about self-healing too. Mary Baker Eddy was not a person who believed in using medicine and doctors. And, we in religious science circles, of course, will see the divine in all of these enterprises. So I gave you those names because I want you to understand, as much as they're part of our foundation, there's not a lot of demand for those courses anymore. Ernest Holmes predicted this long ago, and he was on the scene before Louise Hay. He predicted that this teaching was going to impact the next generation, but he didn't know how it would happen. He himself was more excited about people understanding the power that they have and people understanding that they can have a direct experience of spirit within. Ernest Holmes wanted us to learn how to use it. In other words, he wasn't concerned about the churches going forward as much as he was that people understood the teaching and how it works. Now we're in the 2020s, and we've done surveys, and there aren't too many people who are interested in those courses anymore that we teach. We will teach a few of them in the future. The generation now, whatever the younger generations call millennials, and the younger generations are looking for a direct experience of spirit within. And this is something that they can definitely have, and they don't have to read a bunch of difficult books. Authors like Louise Hay, John Steinbeck, Norman Vincent Peale, Napoleon Hill, Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, Don Miguel Ruiz, and others that I often quote can provide you an easier access than some of our fundamental courses. Our teaching, the thing to understand, like Louise Hay often said, is the simplest thing in the world. That's what Ernest said, actually, Ernest Holmes. It's simple and it works when you become committed to its practice. The world turns Your life changes all for the better when you learn to practice the teaching. So we're here with Labor Day, and Steinbeck was my choice. And like Louise Hay, both of them communicated with a certain simplicity. This, of course, contributed to both of their successes. I chose Steinbeck today because of his great gift in communicating and telling the story of workers, of laborers in the country. He was one of the very, very best. His writing often centered around ordinary people faced with extraordinary challenges and how they overcame them. From his great work, The Grapes of Wrath, where he told the story of a family, one family of thousands of migrants who left for California in search of a better life. He portrays their struggles against poverty and exploitation. He shed light on the plight of the workers during a time of crisis. And then again, he wrote another wonderful book, which was entitled Of Mice and Men. And that was a story of the lives of two displaced migrants, George and Lenny, a story of friendship, dreams, and the challenges faced by people on the margins of life, the vulnerable, the laborers. There was one more that I remembered that I had to look up. It was called The Dubois Battle. And in that book, he showed us the struggles workers face as they begin to advocate for fair wages and better working conditions. There's other authors, of course, but he's the one that came to mind because of his communication style, simplicity. More than anyone else I know, he contributed to raising the awareness about the challenges faced by workers. Just about everything he wrote provides us with a deeper appreciation for the contribution workers have made to building the country. So today is their day. We celebrate them and we celebrate you, those of you who are the workers of the country or of the world. Now I want to move more towards our spiritual message. I need to say in our gatherings, each and every one, that a spiritual principle is always at work. Or spiritual principles are always at work. And they work as laws. A principle. Once we realize there is a principle, we understand it's something that you cannot manipulate. You might think of gravity as an example. It's always there. You can't manipulate gravity. Principles are no different. It's good for us to learn how they work, because as we learn to align ourselves with them, then things will work better for us. Our spiritual work is to realize that we are one with life and that we're here to express life. We're here to come from a place of connection. I want to ask you, are you learning to do this? Those of you who are signing in week by week, are you learning to come from that place of connectedness? I certainly hope so. We teach this in everything we do here. We teach you it's all within. We say over and over again, you are one, you are the one you have been looking for. I can say that again. You are the one that you've been looking for. If you're looking for it in other people, you're looking in the wrong places. You are the one you have been looking for. You may not understand that idea yet. You may not even believe it. It's nonetheless true. The person who's going to help you and uplift you and save you is not going to be the guy down at the club. The person who's going to help you and lift you and save you is you. It happens by you and through you, waking up to who you really are and what your worth is. Once you wake up to your value, then whatever people say won't matter. Then everything starts to change. So you need to stand up for yourself and know your self-worth. You will come to a point where you'll set aside childish things and simply realize that you don't have time for this mess. You don't have time for the nonsense and what I sometimes call the trivial pursuits. Increasingly, you're going to be getting about Spirit's business. You say, my God, I don't have time for that mess. I don't have time for this. Increasingly, you're going to go and realize that you can't change the outer world and you can't change people. Increasingly, you're going to realize that the change is all about self-change. Increasingly, you're going to realize that everything is about your consciousness. Your consciousness. Increasingly, you are starting to realize that you have everything you need within you to bring forth great success, health, and healing. Deep at the center of your being, there is an infinite well of love and life and power, and it is responding to you. If you're having one of those days or one of those weeks and you're constantly coming from anger or resentment or any of that old stuff, if you're finding yourself coming from a disconnected place, a broken place, a place of agitation or judgment, anger or blame, when we do this, it's okay, we're all there sometimes, but we're missing the mark. So as soon as we realize that we're doing it, we want to get back on track. Our spiritual work is to realize that we live in it. We live, move, and we have our being in this energy. And it's always there wooing us and attempting to get our attention. There is not a spot where it is not. The answer now has come down for over 2,000 years. The instruction for us has always been clear. The teacher who understood that we are spiritual beings making mistakes while growing said something you might recall. Whichever one of you have not sinned, cast the first stone. And with that, everyone laid down their stones and rocks. So, all of us can lay down our arms. That message came from Jesus some 2,000 years ago, but we still have people living today with that kind of consciousness who want to go and hurt people and hurt people's families and hurt people. Messy stuff. It's really sad, but there's a lot of divisiveness and destructive stuff going on in the world. But that doesn't have to be going on within you. Your consciousness, hopefully, as you stay involved in this teaching, is higher. And you realize those people, however twisted you see the behavior, are doing the best they can with the information and understanding they have. So we look away from this stuff. We don't want to be part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution. The nation may be divided as never before, but you don't have to be divided. We cannot change the nation. We cannot change people, places, and things. We cannot change other people. We can change ourselves. Please understand, as Jesus and any of the great teachers that were around understood, any great metaphysician or avatar always understood, that all of us are growing and evolving. He lived knowing love was the answer. He communed with it. And all of us can live and commune and know that we live and move and we have our being in this. We must live this way also. The path to enlightenment is accompanied or accomplished by releasing criticism, by releasing anger and releasing judgment. There's a slogan from the Course in Miracles: love holds no grievances. In the story about Jesus, he held no grievances even towards those that would betray him and crucify him. He said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So let us remember this important message once again, to forgive 70 times 7. Let us remember that we're here to forgive and let go. We're here to lift ourselves and others as best we can. We're here to keep extending love and forgiving. Remember, there's not a spot where God is not. Remember, we are one with that energy. And more importantly, we're here to learn to love and to lift. Louise would say, I love, accept, and approve of myself. And the whole message with her is we're learning to lift ourselves up through self-love. And as we love ourselves legitimately and truly, then we can lift other people up. So we celebrate the fact that there is one power, it's a presence, and it's good, and it's in us. The God and good is in us, and we're here to remember it, practice it, and keep inviting it into our awareness. Remember always, I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace instead of anything. You have the ability to transform any moment by bringing yourself into a new moment and taking a pause. I presented before lots of tools for you. A very convenient tool to have when you find yourself dealing with anger or resentment of any kind is say to yourself, I release the need for this. I release the need to judge, or I release the need to blame. I release the need to blame myself or blame anyone. So keep that in your quiver of tools. I release the need. Catch yourself as quickly as you can. Remembering again, I can see peace instead of this. I can release the need to give my power away. So that's a tool for all of us. As we embrace the teaching more and more, we learn about the truth of being. That's a phrase you hear a lot. We learn that there is one presence. That's the truth of being. There's one presence, one power, and that presence is in every one of us. It's a singular presence that's everywhere present, even in people we don't particularly care for at moments. That presence, that power is in them as well. So we take this into our consciousness and we realize, okay, I'm one with the power. There's power for good in the universe and I can use it. And we learn how to use it, and we learn how to use it more effectively. And if we find ourselves lost, or if we find ourselves angry, or we've given our power away in our day-to-day living, we lovingly bring ourselves back to the present and put ourselves in a new moment. And again, we'll say something like, I could see peace instead of this. I release the need for whatever situation. We don't criticize ourselves, or we don't put ourselves down or anyone else. We just gently bring ourselves back. We acknowledge what's bothering us. We try to learn what we can from it, what it's trying to tell us. And then we go about turning the situation around and turning that all-important inner dialogue around to make it more life-giving. Essentially, we're taking our power back. We're getting recentered. So when all these things are happening, we're wanting to learn how to take a spiritual stance, a spiritual perspective, and to do our best to not take anything personally. And I'm going to tell you, this is not easy always. We're human. But we're learning not to take things personally. When people do whatever they do, and people will do what they do, we're learning not to take it personally. Great therapist years ago said to me, "Whose problem is this?" And I oftentimes realized it was my problem. So we don't take things personally. People do what they do. Our job is to get centered and grounded. We're learning to take that pause that we oftentimes talk about here, the pause that will refresh us. And we take that pause, we get centered, and we come back. And we center ourselves in the truth. And we trust Spirit to help us get recentered so we can let go and get back to the garden, get back to a place where we're in joy, where we can stretch and grow. If we find that we're unhappy, we find that we're miserable, if you're on the call and you're listening on YouTube or anywhere else, always remember there is a spiritual solution. Remember that we do our work in our own consciousness. You're not looking outside of yourself. We do our work in mind in our own consciousness. We don't go out there and duke it out with the people at the club. We don't duke it out in our families. We never try to get involved in arguments. And most of us are learning to release the need for all that. We cannot change other people. And my suggestion for everyone on this call is release the need to even try to change them. Whatever they're doing, whatever they're thinking is none of your business. I say this often thinking of Terry Cole Whitaker's book by the same name. What you think of me is none of my business. Our job, our spiritual work, is to learn to love, accept, and approve of ourselves and to extend that to others. It's not always easy loving ourselves. It's not always easy loving other people who are sometimes showing up in really awful ways in our lives. Still, as a spiritual principle, we have to acknowledge that people that annoy us are spiritual beings. And they're coming there to give you a great gift and a great lesson, if you can understand it that way. So when you see these people that are in your lives that are really problematic, there's a lesson for you always. And wherever they are and whenever they show up, this is where they are, remember. And it's very smart of us to let go of our attachments to any of those situations. We want to also let go of our attachment to trying to change other people. We do our work in this teaching, as we say, in consciousness and mind. We're not out there trying to convert people or make people do anything. We do our work within our own consciousness. There was a 12-step phrase, which I learned over 40 years ago, that said, let the hand of the 12-step program be there when someone reaches out for help. In other words, leave people the heck alone. You don't have to go rescue anybody. They are where they are by right of consciousness. They have lessons to learn. So let them learn their lessons. They're living also in a spiritual system. And they're learning what they need to learn. So why would you want to interfere with that? They're learning the perfect lesson. And they will learn it best if they can learn the lessons without interference. The same way when we say here in the teaching that we're always in the right place at the right time. Each of us here are learning what we need to know. Your life story, remember, is about you. And it's not too late for you to turn it all around. Even if you've been living in different kind of ways for quite a while that aren't working for you, it's never too late to turn it around, to discover what's great and what's wonderful about you, to have joy, to feel fulfilled, to have positive expectancy, and to live with more peace. We're here to lift ourselves up, to love and appreciate life, and love ourselves more. How's it been being you lately? How's it been? What's it been like being you lately? Are you increasing your happiness, or are you working against yourself? Are you extending that love to others as best you can? The people you touch in your life, in your world. One thing about this teaching that I've learned long ago is life loves a giver. So as you love yourself, you extend that love to others. Most of us are now learning new ways of showing up and sharing ourselves. We're being reacquainted with what is important. You're waking up to who you have come here to be. Some of you might be learning this at age 30, who you've come here to be. Some of you may be learning this at age 80. You come into this teaching, we tell you that you are an individualization of this God life. There's no one else in the universe just like you. So you can't even calculate your own value or your worth. Many of the folks on the call don't think they're worth much. So you come to us, and one thing we can tell you is that you're worth more than you could ever know. And you're here to grow, and you're here to learn, and you're here to evolve. We're all in this together. We're all spiritual beings. We're human beings, and we're all going forward. All of life is expanding by means of us. Life is expanding. We must be willing to expand and grow along with it. Because if you don't, you're going to learn some very painful lessons. So there's a process of surrendering and letting go. Let go and let God. Trust in the process of life. In our teaching, we learn that we will have demonstration after demonstration. We'll manifest good and greater good. You'll do that when you have conviction and faith in yourself and know that you have worth and value. If you don't have any sense of worth and value, you're going to bring in lesson after lesson until you learn your own value. Life is always responding to what you know. That's what it does. The law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, will always work if we learn how to practice it and apply it constructively to our life. If you're working against yourself and you have negative thoughts and you don't think you're worth anything, then you bring forth all this negative experience. As you come to this center and we're reminding you of who you are, what your value is, and you're one with the one, you're learning to step up week by week by week. And, you're approaching the ocean of life knowing you deserve more. A truly human society, which we're all a part, is a learning society. I remember that phrase from years ago. We're living in a time of change. Some will say it's drastic change. And when that happens, it's the learners, or those of us who are willing to adapt, that will inherit the future. Labor Day. The workers of our country have always been important. Last year, I gave a whole talk about the history of the labor movement. It was interesting. I'm going to spare you all that today. But if you want to watch that on Facebook or YouTube, it's there. This year and today, I want to celebrate all of you as spiritual beings for your spiritual growth and for all you're doing to expand yourself, expand your consciousness, for all of your work and all of your works that lift you up and lift others up. The real work we do here is to celebrate ourselves and our connection with spirit and our growth and how we improve and how we can support each other. And as we do, we learn to love ourselves so we can authentically reach out to other people, because then we're coming from a connected place, a whole place, a holy place, not a broken place. We do all our work, again, in consciousness. But that being said, we're all learning to love ourselves more and more, and we're extending that love to other people around us and in the world. I'll remind you of one of our sayings that has come out of our growth groups. We at the center, one and all, are doing important work, and we can't come down. We don't want to go back to what we were a few years ago. Life is always going forward by means of us. All of us here have learned lessons, and we will continue to learn lessons. We're here for such a brief time. Some of you think, oh, I'm 30, life is going to long. But you get closer to my age, you'll see it's it's a brief trip. And this life, we're here to experience it with joy and abundance, and we're here to learn to love and learn. Let us today release the need to get off track, and let's double down on our desire to live mindfully. I don't know what you're going to need to do, if you're going to set your smartphones every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes to say how great you are, or I love, accept, and approve of myself. But let's take that extra effort to double down and remember who we are. Let us pause and let us remember the good, and let's release the resentments. Let them all go, whatever we do, and invite the awareness of this energy, this spirit in. Know that this is, whatever is going on, this is spirit in your life right now. Always train yourself to keep the high watch. Keep aiming for the stars that Emerson spoke of.